Soften the knees and hips. Get a little forward from the hips. Feel the head float back and the crown rise up. Shoulders sink with the hands. The back, lightly close the chest center. As it spreads, spine lengthens, tailbone drops under the body. Tip of the tailbone lifts slightly. Put the tongue to the roof of the mouth. The weight sink down through the whole body, through the legs, feet. The breath starts to collect in the abdomen. Gently rock the weight forward and back. Feet spread as we come forward, and feet grab the floor lightly as we come back. Begin the arches, ankle up to the calf and shin. Shift from side to side, about 30. Sinking and relaxing the hips, especially on the lighter side. Release that 30% of the weight down through the foot, freely. Circle. Some of that movement again up in the hips and maybe even up in the deep abdomen, low back. Pause and reverse. Look up, open the front of the body. Keep the chin back slightly and the crown rising. Down, open the back, feel the front of the body gently consolidated. Exchange between the front and back. Weights sink down, stabilizing the lower body gently. Side bend. Releasing the shoulders and hips down. Crown rising away, upward. And so it's that upper lower counterbalance, as well as here the side to side. Circle. Pause and reverse. Turn the head. Start to work down through the neck. A little bit more with each turn. The uppermost part of the chest and back. And then let the weight sink. So work down through the body, down through the spine, ribs, Gradually into the hips, all the way down to the ankles. Back a little, tuck the tailbone, untuck. And a big change in the curve of the low back. We'll exchange again between the front and the back of the abdomen. Hip sink, rise. Circle. Reverse. A lot of steps. Sway the hips forward and back. It's time to go tailbone. Drop under the body. Extended feeling in the low back. Reduced curvature of the low back. Again, we can feel the exchange front to back, front to the abdomen, the lower back area, and then side to side. Feel what's happening in the deep abdomen, that exchange from side to side. Keep the attention there as we make a big circle. Pause in reverse. Weight shifting side to side. Again, leaving 30% of the weight behind in that lighter leg, releasing the hip, really trying to ground that 30%. Heavy side take care of itself. I can continue to release the weight smoothly down through the lighter leg. Feel that. Maintain that rounded arch of the legs. Turning from the hips. Upper body just riding along. Hands can be on the lower back, or just resting on the hip bones, or down in the hip crease, where the turning is happening at the top of the thigh. Turn to the weight shift. Again, trying to drop the tailbone under. So chin back, crown up, shoulders and hips sinking. Really giving a lot of attention to that lighter leg. Toe down, heel down. That 30% of the weight is evenly distributed on that lighter foot. Keep it. Let's reverse the turn. Shifting to one side, turning the other way. Turn out one foot. More weight shifts. Hips neutral at first. Then turning forward into it. Forward and back. Then keeping the hips to the front the whole time. Which makes it that much harder to release that back hip, let it open, and keep the tailbone dropping under, and keep the back heel planted. It's been a little while since we added the arm movement here. Palms turning out a little bit as they rise up, and then as they sink, they start to turn slightly in. Pressing down and release forward. Feel 4 phases of this movement. Up and back, down and back, down and forward, up and forward. The body stays one height. Right? Keep the knees bent. Back leg extends a little bit. The front knees bent, hips are square. It keeps me sitting down. Likewise, the shoulder blades are sinking down into the back as I push. So the push is rising up, but the shoulders and the hips, we don't stand up. Keep sinking. That's the counterbalance to that push. Press down. And the name of the movement is press down, not push, as it's often translated in English. So it's not the pushing where the emphasis is, it's that sinking down, releasing down. Push is just the follow through. Let's turn to the other side, do a few weight shifts and hips in neutral position again. Get nice and even, one line, one height, but also one line. So when I'm shifting forward and backward, it's like I'm on a track and there's no sway of the hips. Turn back and turn forward. But that track becomes really clear once I'm keeping my hip bones facing to the front, square to the front foot. And I can, again, feel like I'm moving straight forward and backward, not swaying diagonally. So while we're not walking here, a lot of the walking dynamics are the foundation of the walk. When we're forward, interestingly, so the back leg straightens out a little bit and keep the tailbone dropped under. You can feel the stretch in the back of the leg gently. More targeting the big calf muscle, the gastrocnemius, a little bit the hamstrings, perhaps. It depends on how tight you are, how much you'll notice that. But when we sit back, we're stretching the deeper calf muscle, the soleus. So that's interesting to note that the stretching is not all on the front leg. As we sit back, we're getting a different, deeper kind of stretch in that back calf. And perhaps a more important one. So the soleus muscle is what helps recycle the fluids back up into the body, right? It helps push blood back up. It literally acts like a pump in the leg. Get your blood up from your feet. So sitting backward is just important, just as dynamic as shifting forward. Giving a little attention to what's happening in the calf there and how we're loading it. keeping the hips a little to the front, opening up that back hip, keeping the tailbone drop. Front knee stays a little bit bent. We don't let it slacken out. And we can't necessarily keep track of all these things simultaneously, certainly not in the beginning. So while I do a few repetitions, I might be thinking about keeping the shoulders and hips sinking. And I might give you a little attention to where my weight is on my feet. Keeping the hips square to the front. But changing my focus helps to keep it fresh, not feeling too repetitive. Shake out the arms and legs a little bit. Might do a little ankle movement. To add the hands. Toe in, toe out. Sole in, sole out. And circle. Sole out. We've been doing the family of movements previously, wild horse, parts its mane, and the somewhat related grass sparrow's tail. And these two movements are what's sometimes called simple footing, meaning the stance work, whichever foot is in front, that's the hand that's in front. So wild horse parts its mane is a very good example. My hips are not totally squared up. Right? On this movement, where both hands are right equally placed in front of the body, then that means my shoulders have to be square and my hips have to be square. But in wild horse parts its mane, the angle of the hips is a little more relaxed, a little bit more between the angle of the 2 feet. And I see the same hand and foot is forward. Change sides. I've switched both arm and leg forward. Grass sparrow's tail is a little more complicated because same arm and leg are forward, but now the hips are squared to the front. Which, while it looks like a smaller gesture, it's actually more challenging. Getting the hips around, but again, still have the same hand and foot forward. So it still qualifies as that simple stance, simple footing. The more complicated arrangement, or what's called a cross stance, or often in English you see it written twist step, which is a little confusing because it makes it sound like it's about the foot twisting on the floor or something. But really what it means is the opposite arm and leg are forward. So I don't quite see that here in this push, right? The hands are even, but it's starting to feel a little like a cross stance, right? All I would have to do is drop one hand. So now the opposite leg and hand are forward. So the name of this posture of brush knee cross stance makes it clear that sort of in Tai Chi is that archetypal, complicated or cross footing, cross stance. Again, usually translated as twist step in English, which makes it sound like it's about how I'm stepping or pivoting or something. That's sort of misleading. So the trick here on this kind of stance is that I don't want my shoulder getting ahead of my hip. So as I turn, the shoulders are just riding on the hips and turning as one piece. So that's the same as what we've been talking about. But when I have that hand forward, it gets much harder. The same problem tends to creep up a little bit in that pushing movement. Because it's hard to get the hips around squared or perpendicular to the angle of my front foot. So I tend to make up the difference by twisting a little at the waist or reaching from the shoulder. And those are going to weaken my position quite a bit. Right? And they can even cause a little strain. So I really try to get the hips around. We'll worry about what brush knee means in a minute, but on the cross stance, just as important to get the hip around and not reach from my shoulder. So my shoulder blade should feel like it's still sinking down into my back. The shoulder blade is like a counterbalance to my hand, like it's going the opposite direction. So if I sit back here and turn the hips, now my angle of my hips more matches the angle of my back foot. Now I want to bring the hips around so they're square to the angle of my front foot, perpendicular. The lower hand is just facing the floor. The wrist or the base of the thumb is about in line with the side seam of my pants on that front foot. So it's not very far back. So again, I'm loading that back leg and then extending it. And that's where the push and the drive really comes from. Load that back leg and extend. It's that back leg that's going to push my hips around. So I don't have to try to work real hard from the hip area. Really, if you're in the hip area, I'm mostly just trying to relax and let the leg impart that push and try to relax the tailbone down under the body, which is much harder in this position. And so you see I have very little curve in my low back. But I'm not tensing and tucking with my glutes or with my abdominal muscles, right? Back to the front. You get push from the leg. So this is like a kind of walking really without going anywhere. Still doing many of the activities of the Taiji walking. In some ways, it is walking. Load that back leg and extend it. And you can see as the back knee extends, my front elbow extends a little bit. But the hip is sinking and the shoulder is sinking. So we talk this way in Taiji. The hip and shoulder join together. They have one action. The elbow and knee join together. They have one action. You can only join your elbow and your knee if your hip and shoulder are joined, right? Because they have to connect through the body. They have to soften and sink the shoulder and hip, and then that extension of the knee and elbow connect. And then I can feel that gentle pressure of the back foot down into the floor, nice and even, little toes down, heels down. And then I'll start to feel as if there's a pressure here in my hand as well. So the hand and foot connect. But if I think, oh, I need to push my hand, that's going to tend to throw my shoulder out of position. So I want to feel like that push in my hand sort of arrives there spontaneously, not through an intention to push. Right? The knee drives the elbow, and that delivers that push to the hand. Right? In the lower hand, what I see is it just sort of sinking down. So that elbow is gently extending as well, but it feels like it's just going with gravity. Right? It just gets carried by the body as I turn, and it's just relaxing and releasing down with gravity. But what I feel there should feel very similar to what I feel in the front hand, the upper hand. The upper hand should not feel like I'm doing more work there. So that lower hand can give me a little idea of what the upper hand should feel like. So I just wanted to introduce that movement, virtually cross stance or twist step. And then we'll do a little more free walking. Maybe we'll just go back and do a wild horse parts it's made. But introducing Prashni really brings us to, through the main vocabulary of Tai Chi. Everything else we see in terms of stance work and body positioning to some degree is going to be kind of a variation on those. We also need to look at back-weighted stances and doing walks with the weight arriving on the back leg every time. So maybe that's what will round out the major strategies. So as I turn out one side, that hand comes up. So again, I see that easy coordination of the same hand and foot. Back hand and foot coming together. Wild horse parts. Back. The hips are turning to the front here a little bit, just much less so than what we saw in movement like Prashni. So what we see mostly is this big extension, right? So same arm and leg forward, which means my body has to be at a little bit of an angle. But at the very end of it, because I'm turning to the front, there's an end to that lift and extension. Right? At the very end of the movement, as my weight fully arrives forward, because I'm turning, that hand starts to retreat just a little bit. And that's nothing that I coordinate in my arm, right? There's nothing extra I'm doing in my shoulder, my arm, whatever. It just comes from letting a little more turn happen. So you can feel like there's a rounding of that big, expansive lifting movement. It sort of turns the corner. But right now, that's just something to listen for, pay attention to a little bit, see if you can catch how that happens automatically. What we're really exploring here is the relationship between the the hip position and what happens with the hands. So much of it is controlled by the lower body. Up, out. Shake out the arms and legs a little bit. Maybe sink the weight through one leg to lift the other. Brisk walking in place. The arms swing. And then if you have time, it's always a good idea just to go for an actual walk. Or down the driveway. Thank you.